So, to debate whether GPs should be forced back into face-to-face appointments, I'm joined by NHS GP Dr Laurence Buckman, Dr Dan Poulter, a Conservative MP and former Health Minister, Jamie Jenkins, former Head of Health Analysis at the Office for National Statistics, and Diane Abbott, the fitness expert known as the Green Goddess, who in addition to her health knowledge has experienced this crisis firsthand. Diana, I believe that you spent the entirety of yesterday trying to reach your GP.
I did indeed. I started just on 8 o'clock yesterday morning. I went through such a rigmarole, I can't begin to tell you. I was told I had to sort of, first of all, get onto the website. They couldn't cope with me on the phone, so I had to go on the website. Had to go onto the well-being or the treatment room sections. Every time I tried to do something, I came up against a blank. Then I filled in a form to say what was my problem and how much I was hurting. And apparently somebody would have called me back. I've heard nothing whatsoever. What has happened to our once wonderful NHS doctor surgeries?
Well, no, I agree. I agree, and I've had that exact same experience. So let me ask you, Laurence Buckman, because of course you are the former chairman of the British Medical Association's General Practitioners Committee. What has happened? Why is this going on? Why do GPs not want to see me, not want to see Diana when we feel like we need to see them?
Well, good evening. I'm not going to try and defend totally opaque practice where no one can get in to see a GP. I mean, that can't be right. And I think we should be making appointments available. Our problem is that there are not enough person hours available for the number of people who rightly need to be seen. We can't do it. And we learned during the pandemic that actually an awful lot of people, not everybody by any means, but a percentage, can be seen remotely and get exactly what they want remotely. They don't need to be seen. But that means the majority, and the figures from the government, 58%, still need to be seen face to face. And that sounds about right. I'm from a generation of dinosaurs that regarded everybody as needing to be seen face to face. And that clearly isn't the case
and
anymore.
I understand
a lot of people don't need that.
Dr. Dan Poulter, I understand that. If you just need to get a repeat prescription, for example, of course it could make sense to speak to the doctor on the phone, and I would be happy with that, and I have also done that. But the issue that I have is that when we want to see the doctor face-to-face, that trust is not being given to us. And I believe it should be a patient's right to see a GP face-to-face. Surely that is a fundamental part of funding the NHS out of our taxpayer money.
Well, look, I'm a psychiatrist and a hospital doctor. I work in hospitals. I've been seeing patients throughout the pandemic face-to-face. And I agree with what you just heard, that for me, an essential part of good medical practice is very often to see patients face to face. You can't examine a patient over the phone. You can't examine a patient down a video link. It's right that yes, we use technology to help people, perhaps with the issues like repeat prescriptions. Maybe a check-in for somebody with a chronic or long-term condition might be appropriate on the phone, or for more routine stuff. But actually, a lot of people do need to be seen face to face. And we need to, and I think what the pandemic has also exposed is the sort of the variability in some GP practices. I mean, GPs, I know, work incredibly hard, and they, regardless of some of the adverse headlines the last few days, I know GPs work hard, but there is variability amongst practices, and we've seen that probably exposed even more during this pandemic. And in my own constituency, there's a particular practice at the moment where there's a real problem where people are not able to get the care they need. And that's because they're not being triaged properly and they're not being seen face-to-face.
Jamie Jenkins, you're obviously the former head of health analysis at the ONS, and you say that there are around 7 million people missing diagnoses since the pandemic.
Yeah, I think Diana, Dan, her experience is kind of endemic with the problem that we got at the moment. I think we've got these 7 million people that have missed diagnosis since the start of the pandemic, which is obviously going to feed into the hospitals and secondary care. You've got all of that demand that's kind of come in over the last 18 months, all trying to hit the kind of the GPs at the same time as all the normal demand that would hit the GPs. And Jeremy Hunt's come out today and be quite critical of Boris Johnson over the COVID pandemic, where actually Jeremy Hunt himself was the former health secretary talking about getting more GPs trained, but we actually saw fewer medical students in 2016 than we saw in 2010. He promised then to get more GPs trained. Well, I think the government have come out again today, Dan, saying they're going to get more GPs trained. It's all very well having these words, but they haven't really acted on that. So I think the question is having more face-to-face appointments. I think the biggest issue is actually getting an appointment in the first place. And that is the experience that Diana's talking about. We've got a huge problem with people trying to get those phone calls in at 8 o'clock every kind of day, and they just can't get those appointments. And the main thing here, Dan, is the fact that in the UK, we've got about 2.8 GP for every 1,000 people. In comparable countries in Europe, it's like over 4 or 5. So I think that needs addressing. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about this for the next decade.
So, Diana, I'm interested to know how you're going to deal with this situation, because I'll be honest, and I am proud that I did this because I feel like I'm taking the pressure off the NHS, but I also appreciate that I'm in a really privileged position in order to do this. I decided, because I needed to see my GP face-to-face, or see a GP face-to-face, I would pay to see the GP privately. What are you going to do?
No, I'm not going to do that because I believe in the NHS. A lot of my other friends who are as frustrated as I am at the moment are now seeing private doctors and surgeons. I'm not going to go down that road. I still want to see my doctor or one of the practice face to face. I'm representing really us old people. I'm 82. I'm old enough to have,
my goodness.
I'm old enough to have known when there wasn't the NHS, when my dad and my mum would have taken me to the chemist to ask the chemist what we older people, a lot of us older people, don't want to moan. We don't want to be a nuisance. So I am now saying to myself, oh, I'll put up with this for a bit longer. Things are going to get better, aren't they? But I just long for the surgery to be able to say, Diana, can we talk to you? Because you know and I know when you talk to a person face to face, they may be very proud, especially my generation. We're very proud. We're not going to worry people. But as you talk to a person, they open up. And then you realize that there is something more serious. So I've got all my friends now going through, well, the aches and the pains and the hips and the backs, and some of them are cancer as well, which I previously have had, that aren't being seen to at the moment.
I know.
It's distressing.
No, it is. It's very distressing. And Jamie Jenkins, I've heard terrible stories of elderly people who aren't necessarily particularly technologically minded being told that before a surgery will see them in person, they have to take a selfie of particular body parts, which not only might be logistically difficult, I feel it's really morally wrong. So what's your advice, Jamie, for folk who are starting to just give up? It's too hard. Well, the GP won't see me.
No, I think,
what should those people do?
Yeah, no, I think that, it's important. We've got huge amounts of people out there who've got misdiagnosis over the last kind of 12 months. And we're starting to see, actually, sadly, in the death certificate data that we've got every single week from the ONS, more deaths above average for non-COVID than what you'd expect for the time of year. So it's quite clear that this kind of pandemic of COVID that we've seen has had a devastating effect, but we're starting to see the impact of these kind of misdiagnoses. I would just encourage people to go forward. We've even seen Boots Stand coming out offering £15 appointments they're planning on doing, and I think Diane has talked about not trying to go private.
But
it may help ease some of the burden, but I think
I'm
you've got to try.
all for what Boots are doing. I think it's great if the private sector can take a little bit of the heat for people who can afford it, but I also completely understand why Diana has the view that she does. Final word to you, Dr. Dan Poulter. How do you think folk should be dealing with this so that actually they're not letting potentially really serious health issues go unchecked?
Well, and the worry for me is that unless we have appropriate face-to-face appointments, so we're going to have people just turning up at A&E and putting unnecessary pressure potentially on the emergency departments, and that is a major worry in this. How are we going to deal with this? Well, I think we do need to see, when I talk about the variability in some practices managing the current situation well, some not managing it well. I think we've got to see, more the local commissioning groups, CCGs, being proactive and actually looking at where those practices that aren't seeing people face-to-face appropriately, or there are difficulties people getting through to the GP, taking an active role in supporting those GP practices to get things right for patients. Long term, and this is the last point I just very quickly made, the big issue is, and I think it's been picked up on, we need a proper long-term staffing plan for the NHS, and it's properly invested in, because
they're getting enough money now. They're getting enough money, so that has to come. But for the moment, the Prime Minister has to stick to his pledge that if anyone in Britain wants to see a GP face-to-face, they will be able to do that. And it has to be a real priority of Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary, because this current situation is simply not working. It's been a fascinating debate, though. That's Dr. Dan Poulter, the Conservative MP, former Health Minister, also joined by Dr. Laurence Buckman, the former chairman of the British Medical Association's GP Committee, former head of health analysis at the Office for National Statistics, Jamie Jenkins, and, of course, Diana Moran, the Green Goddess. That's always what you'll be to me, Diana. Thank you all.